The Movie Health Podcast is proudly supported by Telemoods by eClapper Project Inc. Telemoods recommends which movies and TV series to watch by matching the user's mood and real-time offer of all streaming platforms. Download Telemoods today.
Welcome to the Movie Health Podcast, where we talk about movies and mental health. Today I speak to Yasmine Loupis. Yasmine has a Bachelor of Social Work, graduating with honours, and a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, Psychology, and Gender Studies. She has a Master's in Education by Research. She has worked in complex refugee case management, hospital social work, coordination, and currently works in rehabilitation case management with people living with disabilities after a workplace accident. Yasmine also hosts the Social Work Spotlight podcast, which features interviews with social workers in Sydney, Australia, showcasing diverse areas of practice, social work stories, successes and challenges, and provides information on media and other resources that can be accessed to help inform and educate people who are curious about the profession or wanting a career change. Welcome, Yasmine.
Thanks so much, Catherine. I'm thrilled to chat with you and love to get nerdy, so let's bring it on.
I also love to get nerdy, and I was interviewed by you on the Social Work podcast. So now
episode 88, if anyone wants to check it out.
Well, thank you for that. And now the tables have turned, so I'm very excited for this.
Yeah. I'm not quite so comfortable being on the other end, but let's see how we go.
I understand. So today you actually chose to talk about Garden State, so I'll just do a little blurb about it. So it was made in 2004. It's a romantic comedy drama film written and directed by Zach Braff. It stars Zach Braff, Natalie Portman, Peter Sarsgaard, and Jim Parsons. So Andrew, a young troubled man, returns home after a decade to attend the funeral of his mother. However, what follows ahead is a journey of self-realization that changes him forever. So Yasmine, I would love to know why you chose this film.
From a filmmaking perspective, it's just so beautiful. And if anyone has watched it, they will understand it draws you in. So there's always something new I take from it when I rewatch it. As a very brief example, so Andrew, who's Zach Braff's character, he's talking with his friend Mark in one scene, and his friend Mark is absent-mindedly playing guitar during their conversation, and the song that he's playing is what his friend Sam was ice skating to in the video that her mum pulls out for Andrew to watch. So there's just these beautiful interwoven pieces of music and scenes and the use of light and colour and camera angles and technique, and with colour, there's just real stark contrast to, there's a lot of undersaturation, there's a lot of oversaturation. So from a filmmaking perspective, it's fascinating to me, but in terms of therapy and feelings and genuine communication and connection and people just telling a story, it's really beautiful. So it is actually based on real life experiences of Zach Braff. He had early diagnoses of anxiety and OCD, and in this movie the character is labelled as having anger issues and major depression, heavily medicated. So from a therapy perspective, that's really interesting as well. It also stars Ian Holm, who is Zach Braff's character's father, Gideon. A lot of people know him as Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He was in The Fifth Element. And he's a Tony Award-winning, BAFTA-winning, Academy Award-nominated actor. So there are some really great, in addition to Natalie Portman, who's always stunning in anything she touches. So just some really, for an initial, like a first screenplay, a first movie, first thing that this person's directed, it just hits all the marks and is just absolutely gorgeous. So there are many, many reasons why I chose this.
Yes.
But I'm sure you have more questions and I could just go on forever. So
it was, no, for sure. And the thing is, it was the first time that I watched it. I've heard about it, and I love Natalie Portman. I think it's a very accomplished film for a first film directed by Zach, and also starred with him. And the thing is, I wasn't aware that he was diagnosed with OCD. I was reading that what one quote that he said was, "I was completely depressed, waiting tables, and lonesome as I've ever been in my life." And he said that he was experiencing a quarter life crisis at the time. And I feel like this film was maybe like cathartic, like it was part of his healing process to actually write from his life experience and his pain and like translate that to film. And I think it's like it's a very key example of cinema therapy and the way that film can heal us and make us grow and kind of like transform us in many ways. Would you say that what's his character's name again in the film?
Andrew Larchman.
Andrew Larchman. Yeah. Would you say that he's your favorite character?
Look, I honestly don't think I'm. I mean, he's the title. He's the one that everything is centered around. I would honestly think Natalie Portman would be my favorite. I don't necessarily think I resonate with any of the characters. I don't think I like any of the characters necessarily in the film, but I can see myself in aspects of their personalities. So I can see myself in the seriousness of Gideon, Andrew's father, the color and energy of Sam. So I think it's a little bit of everything, to be completely honest. And what I really love, going back to that point about an early film creator, is just the self-awareness that shows me, in terms of, it's one thing to have all these difficulties in your early life and be so completely disassociated from everything. But Zach Braff communicates that so well, in my opinion, of just, I mean, there's even a scene where he's literally blending into the background. He's been given a shirt with material from his aunt at his mother's funeral, and he's standing in front of wallpaper that's exactly the same. So there's a real interesting film technique there, which is demonstrating this person as retreating into the background and things are happening around them and they don't have a huge sense of control or agency over what's going on.
Yeah. I did a lot of research after watching this film and in preparation for this episode, and I read somewhere, so a direct quote from Zach on his online blog. He actually explains what Garden State was about. So he said, what Garden State's really about is how short life is and how we get caught up in so many entanglements and insecurities and worries and obsessions and trivial arguments, while life races right by us, shaking its head at how seriously we take ourselves. I think the scene that you just mentioned, it really shows that. And, a lot of interactions that he has with Sam's character, played by Natalie Portman, really showcases that too, in the way that, I mean, how would you describe her character? I know you mentioned how like colorful she is, and
free and light and bubbly and rambunctious and not at all shy. So she's kind of the opposite. So Andrew is a bit of a wallflower, literally, and Natalie Portman is just this vivacious, loves everything to do with life, enjoys the chaos in many ways, is a self-confessed pathological liar, but she said that, I know I do it, but I always say that I've done it when I've done it, so you know that I'm genuine afterwards. So she wears her heart on her sleeve. She has no problem connecting with Andrew, who his entire life has had problems connecting. And through the course of the film, she and her personality and her openness allows him to mirror that, which is really lovely. So she kind of creates the personality or the traits that he's been looking for this whole time.
I don't know if you know, but sorry, you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say there was another quote from Zach Braff, who he said there are times when in his own life where he would feel homesick for a place that doesn't exist. And Andrew, the character, says something similar. He said that family is a group of people that miss the same imaginary place. But when he's with Sam, he feels safe, like he's home. So I know we'll get into themes later, but there's a huge theme there of connectedness and belonging, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is a huge theme. Would you say that you have a favorite scene or like standout scenes that you resonate with?
A lot of it is just from a cinematography perspective. So there's the pool party scene where everyone jumps into this. It's a nighttime scene. The pool is like a big figure eight and it's lit. So it and there's a and the way it's filmed is it's filmed from top down. So you see the shape of the pool and all of the young adults are lining up outside on the edge of the pool, and they all go 1, 2, 3, jump in, and Andrew is left there standing very awkward in his underwear because he didn't bring swimmers. And Natalie Portman looks back and she's like, can you can't swim, but she doesn't make a big deal of it. He jumps in, and then you again see the top down shot of him very close to drowning, trying to get to the shallow end of the pool. But it's that genuineness. She's connected with him and gone, I'm not going to make a big deal of this. I'm going to follow you. So you see him swimming towards the shallow end and her following him. It's like this beautiful metaphor for someone holding him in that space and allowing him to just be okay with not joining the group. There's another really beautiful scene when they're spending time in Sam's house, but specifically her bedroom. So very early on in the film, a lot of the scenes are shot in that sort of desaturated tone. So everything's grey or white, and there's barely any furniture. There are no knickknacks. There's no sense of who is this person and what do they have around them that's important. And then stark contrast to Sam's room, which is quite cluttered but also super saturated. You've got her bedspread that's just a patchwork quilt. You've got clothes all over the bed. You've got pictures all over the desk. It's warm. It's full of things. It's lived in. And it encourages him, in a sense, to be unique and free. And there's this gorgeous little scene where she says sometimes when she feels completely unoriginal, she gets an urge to do something that no one else has done, something completely unique. And so he very awkwardly tries to do something that he thinks is unique. And she's like, no, I've done that before, definitely. So
I
it's
love
just
that
really
scene.
sweet and cute. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's really standout dialogue in it as well, and of course I had to write it down because there's real diamonds of wisdom here. I think Sam says, "If you can't laugh at yourself, life's going to seem much longer than you'd like." I'm not saying I don't cry, but in between I laugh. It's silly to take anything too seriously. I look forward to every day. It feels good. Another one, she says, "Life, it's real. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes that's all we have." Like the depth to her character, just was incredible. I don't know if it's one of her first films. I know she's been like, no, okay, yeah, she's been acting for.
Since she was 12, 13, I think.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the fact that, again, Zach could get these amazing, distinguished, experienced, renowned characters on such a tiny budget was in itself incredible. And then to get the licensing for the soundtrack, which ended up winning a Grammy Award, that was incredible as well. But yeah, so there's also some great stuff from Andrew's dad around that loneliness and grief and the happiness that Sam is talking to there. And I get the sense that there's a sense of grief around not being able to make everyone around him happy. So he was indicating at one point that happiness is only possible when you're not sad or angry. But realistically, we can have a mixture of everything and still be happy. So it's just so interesting seeing those two characters as the main people in his life at that time. And in the beginning of the film, there are a lot of one shots. So a lot of scenes where all you see is one person in the frame. And then slowly through the course of the film, you see that taken over by two shots and group scenes.
Yeah.
So slowly, as he starts to completely go off his medication, which we learn, he's starting to unnumb, he's starting to feel, and he's starting to connect with other people.
I love how you're introducing filmic concepts in this episode. And you truly meant it, that you wanted to nerd out. No, I love that. How did you think about Andrew's interactions with his father? So I know obviously his father was also his psychiatrist, which is problematic and unethical in itself. But how did you feel about the relationship at the start, and how it, in a way, progressed at the end?
Mm, mm. I mean, I guess to set the scene, the one of the first scenes in the movie is he's interrupted from a dream by a voice message from his father telling him to come home for his mother's
Mm,
funeral. We see him going through the motions of his daily commute to work, waiting tables at the Vietnamese restaurant, which Zach Braff had actually done, waiting for his next acting role, being treated
mm,
horribly. They're like, the patrons are like, "Why don't you have any bread?" And he's
yeah.
like, "Well, this is a Vietnamese restaurant." At the funeral, then, and there's another great scene where he turns up to work in his car and he gets out and he realizes that he's driven away from the petrol pump and it's just
Mhm.
torn away from the Bowser. And so he's just so completely not with it, right? At
Mhm.
the funeral, we realize that he's estranged from his father because you just don't see them connect at all. There's distance between them and there
Mm,
are obstacles between them. So there's always a desk in the way, there's a staircase in between them. The interactions are really awkward and clinical. And
mhm,
it seems as though his father gives the impression that he thinks his son is a disappointment. He's
mhm,
unreliable, he can't make meaningful connections. And despite his best efforts, which we also interpret as medicate him until he can't stand up,
yeah.
he hasn't been able to get through to his son. So
Mhm,
he mentions to his dad that he's been getting these headaches, and that's
mhm,
a scene of vulnerability of, hey, I feel like I'm not doing well. Can I get a referral to a psychiatrist?
mm,
His dad sends him to see someone. And in opposition to the father, the new psychiatrist seems to actually take an interest. He listens to
yeah.
him. He even comes from behind his desk and he sits next to him in the
Mm,
clinic chair. Andrews gives that's an opportunity for Andrew to give a little bit more context. He said he was
mm,
sent to a boarding school to hopefully curb his anger. He was medicated as far back as he can remember. But the psychiatrist gives some really good advice. He says, you should find a psychiatrist who's not your father. He should know better.
mhm,
Secondly, you should see a therapist to deal with your life stressors, someone who knows your story and not just rely on this medication. And
yes.
that's when we learned that Andrew's just gone off his medication completely. He was on lithium and probably some other
Mm,
things. But he starts to interact a little bit more with the people around him. And then there's a beautiful interaction towards the end of the film where Andrew confronts his dad. And his dad is in a vulnerable position because the scene is he walks into his dad's bedroom. His dad is asleep with the TV on and also a newspaper in front of him.
mm,
So
mhm,
we wonder, what is he drowning out? But his dad's asleep. He wakes him up. He sits down on the edge of his bed, which I feel like he's probably never done. And he puts his hand on his dad's chest
mm,
and has a real conversation with him, just allowing him and probably his dad to feel all the feels. So there's
yeah.
been sort of this full circle of, I've not felt that I could talk to you openly, but now I see how important that is and how talking to people about my feelings has enabled me to connect with other people. So it's
Mhm.
probably going to have the same effect for you.
Yeah, it shows the importance of the you know, building connections with people close to us, and
Mm.
like having relationships with good therapists. I think it shows that in that way, and I love that scene. I think it was so powerful, and the movie itself, I think, is a huge reminder that we all have our own unique stories and different narratives in our lives. We all have problems to overcome, and the way that we can overcome them, most of the time, is to be able to speak to people, to have dialogue with people who we trust and who are close to us, and just to reach out, and to not be so disconnected. So I think like this film does that in such a quirky way. And I love that because I know the film is described to be amusing, quirky, offbeat. I love these kinds of films. And another like mini review that someone wrote was, it delivers a quirky spin on familiar 20-something tropes with a cannily placed soundtrack. Garden State has enough charm to mark a winning debut for first-time director Zach Braff. I love how you mentioned before you've mentioned it a few times actually about the soundtrack, and
Mhm.
the song at the end. I remember hearing it like years ago and not being sure what it was, but I looked it up and it Let Go by Foo Foo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just such a insightful song, and I just love the main line in it. There's beauty in the breakdown, and I think
Hmm.
Zach Braff kind of he nailed it. Like he went through that breakdown personally, and then he shows that through the character of Andrew, and his progress throughout the film, his character arc shows that he realizes that there is beauty. There is beauty in his pain and what he experienced.
Hmm.
Um,
And the singer Imogen Heap also says, "Jump in, what you waiting for?" As one
yes,
of the
yeah.
other lines. There's also like Simon and Garfunkel's "The Only Living Boy in New York" song that I absolutely adore, but the song is about feeling alive and unrestrained, and one of the lines is "Let your honesty shine." So
Mm,
just there's so much to take out of it. If even if you just listen to the soundtrack and you've watched the movie and you think, "Oh yeah, I remember where that was from," and it's kind of given it a different meaning because I'm not busy watching what's on the screen, I'm busy listening to it and then reflecting on why that was put in the film in the first place.
that's true. That's true. Um, so you mentioned themes before, and I was going to ask you what are the main themes that you find in the film and that you think are relevant?
Yeah, I definitely think belonging and connection,
Hmm.
having somewhere to belong, whether that's a place or a group of people or a single
Hmm.
person. Definitely love and awakening and that sense of
Mm,
identity and finding out who you are because your life is just beginning. If he says quarter life crisis, great, but I would define it as your life is beginning. So, what do you want to make of it? And
yeah.
the third I would say is probably taking control or action. So
Hmm.
Andrew says, life is too short, go for it now. He also says, I've spent my whole life waiting for something else to start. So
Mm,
it's a very sticking point. He's obviously at a crossroads and he's just not sure
yeah.
where his life is going. He's not even sure if he's going back at the crossroads instead of forwards. And
Mm,
then he realizes that I do have these options, I do have opportunities. I'm the one who needs to see it through.
mm, yeah. So at the end, I guess we could say that he surrendered to life. He obviously opened himself up to fall in love with someone. And I love how he says to Sam when they're at the airport, just before he nearly leaves, but he doesn't. Sorry, just spoiled at the end. He says, "You changed my life, and I've only known you for 4 days." I think that really shows the power of human connection. That sometimes, like, it's not necessarily about the length of time you know someone, but it's the transformation that occurs between the two of you. And that scene was so emotional. Do you remember when you first watched the film, how you responded to it?
Oh man, I was at uni, and uni days are always emotionally turbulent. There was a lot going
Yeah.
on, and I was still figuring out who I was, so I could
Mm,
definitely resonate and connect with some of those themes, but also that whole what do I want from a friendship group? What do I want from a partner? What do I want
mm,
from my family? And to see someone go through that anguish was definitely hard. But also just
mm.
Natalie Portman, my God, that like you can't see her cry and not need to cry
Yes,
urgently right
that's
now.
so true.
So it doesn't matter what mood you're in, like there are some films like Never Ending Story. I can't watch that
Mm,
if I can't cry because I know that
mm.
this poor horse is going down. And there are certain things where you just know that it doesn't matter. You could be in the best mood, and it's not that it's bringing you down. Natalie Portman is not bringing me down. She is just again making me feel all the feels just with her face. Just is so
Yes, yeah.
powerful, and
Mm,
because there's not much else happening in that shot, all you've got
mhm.
is the stairs that she's sitting on, and Zach Braff's
Yeah.
next to her, and there are escalators going up, which again is significant, right? They're not showing the
Mm,
escalators on the other side that are going down, they're only showing the ones that are going up. But because everything else around them is so stark and empty, you have no choice but to focus in on their emotions and their facial expressions, and you're just completely immersed, and I love it.
mm. Yeah, it is a very immersive film. It's very funny as well. It's just
Mm.
it's so eccentric, and it shows how we all have our, sorry if I'm stuttering today, but idiosyncrasies. Yes, all
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
idiosyncrasies, and the fact that Sam was just so unashamed and just her authentically herself, and that kind of paved the way and allowed Andrew to do the same. And you could see his facial expression change. He actually started to smile. There was color in his skin. Like there was just a different kind of energy about him.
Mm-hmm.
Was
And
there
he
anything
cried
else?
for the first time since his
Yes,
mother died. And
exactly.
yeah, the moments of humor were short, but they
Hmm.
stick with you. So, like even right in the beginning, he's in the psychiatrist's office, and he meets Sam for the first time. And there's a lady who walks in with a guide dog, and the guide dog comes around and starts humping his leg, and she's like,
Yes.
"Kick it in the balls." Uh, it, and also just he stays the night at his friend Mark's place, and Mark's mum has just slept with one of their high school friends, and his high school friend had finished from his evening job at some castle restaurant where he has to dress up as a knight. So there's just this great shot of Andrew waking up on the couch, seeing a knight in armor walk through the kitchen. Just yeah, it's surreal and ridiculous and great.
It is. It is. I know that the cover of the DVDs and everything, and usually when people see Garden State, it's the picture of Andrew, Sam, and Andrew's friend Mark standing on, I think, a bus, and they're wearing the garbage bags. So the infinite abyss scene. Was there anything you wanted to talk to about that? Because that's obviously kind of like the key scene that people remember from the film.
Yeah, I guess there's a bit of context to that scene because Mark has a side job as well, I guess it's his main job. His side job is some other things, taking back goods for
Hmm.
to get money. So he steals things and then takes them back for refunds. But his main job
Yeah.
is a grave digger, and we realize
Mm.
very early on in the film that he steals things before he buries people. And so he's gone to retrieve something of
Hmm.
importance from someone that he sold it to. And
Yeah.
they go down to, so the film was actually at one point going to be Andrew's Ark or something like that. And the people that he
Oh.
goes to see is in the middle of this quarry, and this person has built a boat, and the
Yes.
person who's in the boat refers to it as his ark. So
Hmm.
again, there's drawing on a lot of metaphors around new beginnings and being alone in certain ways. But
Mm.
anyway, they retrieve what they meant to from the ark, and they go and they climb on. It starts pouring. Someone shows them kindness by giving them the garbage bags, and they climb on top of this derelict piece of machinery and stare into the abyss, in effect, kind of finishing off one chapter of their lives and staring into their future. And that's what
Yes.
I take from that scene. And
Mm.
again, Andrew has never been allowed to or allowed himself to feel, and he just starts screaming, and then they all start screaming in solidarity, and it's beautiful. And then more emotions as he turns to Sam and kisses her for the first time. And yeah, it's a beautiful scene.
Yeah, I think it's very life affirming, I guess the film's intention is, and the fact that Zach the actual film was filmed in his hometown of South Orange. So it
Mhm.
is like such a personal, intimate film for him. Have you seen his other films?
I love his other films, especially
Mm.
shout out Wish I Was Here, which was
Ooh.
2014, with
Yeah.
Kate Hudson, Donald Faison, Josh Gad, who many people know as the snowman from
Mm.
Frozen, and
Oh,
Mandy Patinkin,
yeah.
who I absolutely adore. Mandy, he was Princess Bride. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my
Oh my
father.
gosh, I love
Prepare to die.
him.
So Mandy Patinkin's in that. But it's a story of what it means to be at a crossroads as a parent, a spouse, a child all at once. Absolutely beautiful film. Kate Hudson plays Zach Braff's wife in the film.
Mm.
And
Yep.
Donald Faison is his best friend in real life. They have a podcast together called Fake Doctors, Real Friends, which is a
Oh,
Scrubs rewatch podcast, which is
I see.
awesome as well.
Mhm.
But the other film of his that recently came out, which is incredible, would recommend, is called A Good Person. So it came
Mm.
out last year, 2023. It stars Florence Pugh. It was actually
Yeah, love her.
written for Florence. It has
Mm.
Morgan Freeman. Again, how does this guy get these people? Probably with amazing scripts, right? So
Yes.
Florence has a promising life, but a car accident leaves her kind of lost and addicted to painkillers and with
Mm.
unresolved sorrow. And she finds strength and solace in her would-be father-in-law who's battling his own grief. So
Mhm.
the relationship, she was engaged to someone, and after her accident that fell apart, but it's the father of, yeah, it's just a beautiful film about pain and loss and strength and connection.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it does it well.
I do really want to see it. I love Florence Pugh.
Hmm.
I know they used to be together, and I think like she was supporting him as well for the
Hmm.
premiere, which was recently. His would you say his films are pretty character driven and they're all pretty quirky as well?
Definitely quirky, definitely things that you wouldn't expect. So they kind of throw you for six and you just think, oh, okay, cool. Like that just happened. There's a great scene in Wish I Was Here where there's a swear jar and the kids are at the breakfast table, and the dad says, okay, just for now, you're going through a hard time. Just for now, you can swear, you can just say whatever you want, all in one go, let's go. And the stuff that the kid, like the little boy who's probably like 7 or 8, comes out with, you just think, okay, you took it very literally. You had a good go. Good on you, mate. So it is, you get to know these characters and you get to care about these characters. And the movie making process itself pulls you in and makes you
Mhm.
care about these people.
Yeah, he uses film techniques that are pretty powerful and different, I guess. Some off center techniques. Would you say that there are movies that are similar to this one that you've seen and that you would recommend?
In terms of if you're looking at a thematic synonym here, or a comparison, even something like Looking for Ella Brandy, which
Oh
in
yeah.
my upbringing was very formative, as well as a WOG child and growing up in
Mm,
Australia and feeling as though you kind of belong to different societies, but not really 100% in one of them. And it is very quirky and it is very Australian, which I love. I
yeah.
love an Australian film that is not too ochre or embarrassing. It's just real Aussie, and you can
Mm,
really kind of, yeah, you feel like, okay, that really reflects my experience. But yeah, I think that would probably be the closest thing I can think of in terms of that formative, quirky, but also super real, super close to my heart. Watching in a formative space, and also I can watch it 100 times over again and never get tired of it. And it also has a wonderful soundtrack.
mm, yeah, yeah. Have you seen Perks of Being a Wallflower?
I have, yeah,
You have,
a
yeah,
long,
yeah.
long
Because
time ago.
yeah, that movie came to mind for me. Great cast, and I don't know if you've seen The Way Back. That movie is so eccentric. It's hilarious. It's a
Mhm.
coming of age film. And another film that came to my mind when I was thinking, oh, what's like similar? One of my favorite films is Kings of Summer. I don't know if you've seen that
Yeah,
film.
I've got some
No,
homework to do.
such a good movie. I totally recommend it. I'd love to know what you think if you do watch it. But
Yeah,
those are the films that kind of resonate with me and are similar to Garden State, in my opinion.
yeah, cool. I
Yeah.
mean, Perks of Being a Wallflower reminds me so much, and maybe it's just kind of the same genre, like a youth or young adult. I think it is YA, young adult
Mm-hmm.
novel that's been turned into a film. Things
Yeah.
like John Green and The
Mm.
Fault in Our Stars. I always think
Yes.
Perks of Being a Wallflower is so similar to that, in the sense that the characters are just, they throw you off guard. They have such amazing depth to them. And yes, it's written for a younger audience, but it's just so, like, it'll hit you when you're 50 as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything by John Green I absolutely adore, but I
Mm.
really, so don't watch anything by John Green in on a plane. Firstly, the altitude will get you, but also
Yes.
you're around people and going, I'm not carrying
Weeping.
the bag. And or don't read anything by Khaled Hosseini, who wrote The Kite Runner
Oh,
and A Thousand Splendid Suns, and don't read that on a plane or in a public space, because you will just be a sobbing mess. But
Okay.
I think for me, I know a lot of people, I am coming back to a point, but I know a lot of people watch films or TV shows or whatever it is as a form of escape.
Yeah.
I watch things to feel. So,
Yes.
and even, I mean, as a social worker, a lot of people say, why do you want to watch that? Or you just put your work down and just stop being a social worker. I can't. It is it is who I am. And it's why I am who I am. And I see that as just, I love to see other stories and to feel emotions that might be kind of similar to mine, but maybe I'll never be in that situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I watch films to feel, and I don't want to disconnect from the world. I want to have the opportunity through other people, if necessary, to kind of have that connection and sense of a beautiful story and a beautiful narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think, film is such a powerful medium, because it does make us feel pretty much every emotion on the human emotion spectrum. Like, we really do turn to it because it has music. It has the visual side of it. It has like everything. So that's also why I love film, and I've always been drawn to it. And I totally agree with you. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention about this particular film?
Zach Braff is such an interesting person as a writer, as an actor. If you haven't seen Scrubs, it was just such a formative thing for me. So I think the first season came out in 2001. It went for 9 seasons, and he. So if you were to watch a documentary of even just the making of Garden State, you'll
Yeah.
see him in his element. As soon as the camera starts, he's like, yeah, cool, I've got this. I know where I want to be. I've got everyone positioned exactly where I need them to be. I've got this vision and I'm so confident in my vision. As soon as he steps out of that role, he turns into an unconfident, I'm not sure
Mm.
of myself. He'll say things like, I'm not sure if that's funny or not. I find it funny. I hope other people find it funny. You just feel as though there's this person who's so shy in many ways and so just not sure of himself. But then he creates these beautiful artworks and beautiful stories. And yes, a lot of it's from his own life, but unless you have that self awareness that I was talking about earlier, you can't channel that into something that touches other people. So yeah,
Yeah.
I have so much respect for him and what he's creating and who he is as a person. He just seems really, really genuine and is so passionate about what he does. He was the only kid he knew that went to theatre camp as a kid instead
Mm.
of the sports ball camps, and he just he met his people the first time he went to theatre camp. There were these people
Hmm.
that, well, he was like, this thing exists. There are these people like me. And also, he loved that everyone else at theatre camp was gay. And so he had his first kiss at theatre
Mm.
camp because all of a sudden the girls are like, hey, this is the only guy I can kiss. But yeah, it just he's so creative. He's so beautiful and passionate. And yeah, I think if he ever creates anything, I'll continue to watch it.
Yeah, yeah. And this is something else that he said that is just so relevant to what you just said. He said, no one said being a creative person was easy, but you have to be vulnerable and authentically yourself. Otherwise, what's the point? I
Hmm.
remember reading that and just being like, yes, exactly, 100%. What's the point? If you aren't authentically yourself, if you don't show your insecurities, being vulnerable, your human side, I mean, that's the whole point of being creative. And I really admire writer directors, and the fact that, he writes his films, he directs them, and he stars in them as well. I really respect that. Highly respect
Hmm.
that.
He's
Um,
also
yeah,
so he has
yeah.
a background in his family of psychology as well. His mum's a
Mm,
psychotherapist. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some, mum, can you help me make sure that this makes sense? Or, yeah, he's had
I
his own
see.
battles with mental health as a kid. So, yeah,
Yeah.
just drawing from his own thing and also making sure that he's connecting with the right people in his life and asking for support when he needs it, which,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll take a little bit from.
Ah, I didn't know that. Now, that's a really good segue to my next question. With your experience, we are both social workers, very proud of it. What would you say would be your mental health tips for listeners today?
For me, routine is number one. Having a
Mm,
structure that becomes automatic. I don't have to think
mhm.
about it. I have consistency in my world. A lot of that is around keeping active. So
Yeah.
there is very rarely a day where I don't get up and go to a gym class straight away.
Mm,
But typical ex gymnast, I can't just do my own thing at the gym. I need someone telling me what to do. So I always need a class. So I structure
mhm.
my world around my favorite gym classes.
Yeah.
I have a timetable up on my wall of my gym classes, and it's in Sharpie. It's not getting erased. It's this is what needs to happen. It's like a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
And a lot of that includes yoga. It includes mindfulness. It includes being able to appreciate what I have,
Yeah.
what my body can do, the small things in life, taking time out for me. So sometimes it's just, what do I do just for me? Because you're the
Mm,
same professionally, you give and you're not very good at receiving. And in my personal life, there's a lot of that as well. I just started a volunteering program recently with homeless people, and a friend said, "That's great, but that's not for you." It's like, oh yeah, I guess so. Like, what are the things I do that are just for me? So,
mm.
hiking, getting fresh air. Hiking is a thing where no one else is benefiting from that. Maybe if I go with a
Yeah.
friend, we both benefit mutually from a conversation, but I am not contributing to the world by hiking. So, for me, that balance is,
Mm,
yes, having that structure and routine, that consistency in my life, which I desperately need, but knowing to include things that are just for me is really
yeah.
important. I'm talking with my hands, mostly because I'm a wog, but also because I like doing things with my hands. So that's my next point
I
is
love that.
I love cooking. I love baking. You had my lovely friend Pay on the podcast recently, and we love
Yes.
just getting together and making dumplings for half a day. So I find that really therapeutic, just
Mm,
zoning out, not thinking about anything. For me, it's very cathartic, that sort of repetitious. I don't have to think about what I'm doing. I can just very tactily do a
mm.
thing. I love jigsaw puzzles, but often I'll multitask. So I'll put a podcast in my head and I'll do a jigsaw puzzle at the same time. So you're using the part of your brain that is that, for me, it's a little bit of a reward center as well, because I get that
Mm,
piece and I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit addictive. I have to make sure that I don't do jigsaw puzzles at night, because it
mm.
will be that I'll just get one more piece and before you know it, it's 1 a.m. So I have to calm my enthusiasm sometimes with
Mm.
that. Also,
Yeah. Yeah.
just connection. And again, this is a theme for the film, connecting
Mm.
with like-minded people, the volunteering that I mentioned, the podcast, which completely selfishly is a way for me to connect with other social workers and other beautiful humans in the area who are like-minded, are people that have the same values as me, and also my colleagues. I have beautiful colleagues who are incredibly supportive, and we're all so incredibly different, come from different professional backgrounds, different experience, but together we make a really strong, connected, supportive team. So those are the main ways that I maintain my health and my mental health.
Yeah, I really love what you said. I think, having interviewed quite a few professionals now, many people mention a routine, which I think is so helpful. But I think you're the first person who said just for me, and
Mm,
that is so true. I think obviously professionally we are always giving, and there can be compassion fatigue, or just generally it can be very draining sometimes. So it's good to be able to actually focus in on what is good for us, and like no one else necessarily. So I really love how you mentioned that, and you actually gave specific examples that work for you. I know for me, I listen to podcasts as well, while I paint, or I might color in or something, or even just like draw, even though I'm horrible at drawing. But yes, I know what you mean. It's kind of like multitasking as well, but it's still something that is, I don't know, like mindful, and
mhm.
helps us mind, body, and spirit. So I love how you mentioned that. I would love to know, Yasmine, because you've interviewed many people. Like I think over 100, more than 100 people.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yes, that's incredible. That's an incredible achievement. And I know that obviously, everyone you interview, they talk about what they do. Now, I would like to ask you if you want to just talk a bit about what you do professionally and yeah.
Oh,
If there's anything
yeah.
else. Yeah.
I can talk about what I do all day. How much time have you got? I am very fortunate to be in a role where I keep saying to people, it's like they created the role for me, and it is just perfect. But when I say the role was, I reckon, created for me, it's because it blends my community experience and my hospital experience. It blends my love of I get to support someone in that early phase of recovery, help them to understand what's to come, set expectations very early, support the family members, which I absolutely adore doing. That's one of my favorite parts of it, is helping them to just get their head around, I'm a carer now. What does that mean? How do I support this person? I'm not confident. What do I need to know? Actually supporting the discharge planning process, getting the person what they need, at least just to get home. And then once they're home, once they're settled, figuring out what their goals are and helping to support that. So I look after people in the first usually 2 years of their recovery. And once they're a bit more stable, there's someone else in my team who's really good at supporting the longer term. But I get to do that case management. I get to be their single point of contact for their claim. And yeah, I can see myself doing it for much longer.
Wow, you have such incredible experience. And yes, it is very obvious. I mean, in 20 years experience, you've been in 3 roles. So you've really grown within these roles and been able to amalgamate all your skills and transfer them all into this role, which seems so perfect for you. So I think that's really beautiful. And I'm so glad that you were able to talk about your experience, because you basically spend all your time on the Social Work Spotlight podcast, asking people about their experience. So I want to know more about you. So thank you so much for that. I love that. But yeah, thank you for today.
I'm glad I could.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I really enjoyed talking about Garden State with you, knowing about your mental health tips and knowing more about what you do. So thank you very much, Yasmine.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
The Movie Health Podcast is proudly supported by Telemoods by eClapper Project Inc. Telemoods recommends which movies and TV series to watch by matching the user's mood and real-time offer of all streaming platforms. Download Telemoods today.